Welcome to a complimentary podcast from Association Management Consulting and Evaluation Services. This is one in a series of podcasts presented by AMSIS consultants for those involved or interested in association leadership and management. The topic of this podcast is an introduction to communications planning. The topic is being presented by AMSIS consultant Lori Keith.
Hello, we're going to talk about communication planning. So what is it and what are we referring to? Well, first let's talk about communication. In the past, it meant sending a message. Really, it was information that was received, that was understood, and that created an action. But really, it was information out and an information push. These days, though, communication is more often interpreted to refer to two-way interaction. Information out and information back. Really, it's a dialogue. You're informing, you're persuading, you're clarifying, you're listening, and you're learning. That way, you're communicating. Communication planning refers to the process you implement to help you create this dialogue. In associations like yours, it would be mainly with your members, but it could refer to your board, your volunteers, your funders, your staff, etc. Now you may be saying, we're already so busy, we already have a newsletter, we know what our members want, we don't have the resources, etc., etc. So why bother focusing on communication planning? Well, quite simply, your communication plan creates the structure that helps you reach your goals. Even the process of creating your communication plan is incredibly valuable. Let's quickly talk about the benefits. Your communication plan gives your association the foundation upon which to guide your communication activities. Your communication plan describes where you want to be and helps you engage the right audience to get there. Your communication plan helps you optimize valuable resources and ensure that you are laser focused in your efforts. Most associations I have worked with have very limited communication budgets. So you want to make sure that you're targeting those budgets at the exact audience that you need to reach. Your communication plan will provide the opportunity to assess the activities that you've included and see whether you're reaching your goals. And finally, your communication plan really provides you a roadmap to help you engage with your different audiences. In short, your communication plan is a straightforward, step-by-step process that will help you identify your audiences, that will help you clearly and logically plan what you want to say, those are your key messages, to your key audiences, and determine the best way to deliver your message. This podcast will explain the key steps and the elements of communication planning, why it's necessary, what needs to be in place, and what the key steps are to get you started. So let's quickly start with the basics. Why communicate? Well, you as an association, by your nature, you represent a cause or you exist really to fill a need. And there will always be members, there will always be a leadership group, usually it's a board of directors, there will likely be funders. Each of these groups needs to know what you're accomplishing and how you're helping to fill their needs. And they need to know it clearly, regularly, and often. And I'll reiterate here that a newsletter is not a communications plan. It may be a component, but it's not your plan. So the key takeaway is that associations need to communicate effectively, period. So let's go over the 4 elements of creating a communications plan. For this podcast, we'll touch the high points, and we'll plan to go into each section in greater detail in future podcasts. Number 1, ground your communication plan with communication policies. As with other areas, you need to start with a policy foundation, as your policies formalize your decisions and your processes. Your policy will outline the reason for communicating, whether you're informing, engaging, gathering feedback, raising funds, canvassing for volunteers, There are many reasons why, and you will have your own. Your communication policy may describe the types of communication that you're going to use. Mail-outs, email lists, social media, radio, community newspaper. Your communication policy may clarify how each type will be used. Perhaps your mail-outs are for new events. Your email lists will be to maintain ongoing connection. Social media to publicize events and good news stories, etc. Your communication policy will identify who is accountable. So who in your organization is responsible for the various tasks that are in your communication plan? And your policies will note the decision and approval points. So does the communication plan itself have to be approved? Or is there a formalized approval process for content, for example? A few more things about policies. Policies may refer to the things that I had mentioned, but generally they don't go into that amount of detail. I provided those as examples. Your policy should provide the outline within which your organization or your association can communicate effectively. Another point is that all effective communications need to align with your brand, and that is who you are and what you represent to your members. Remember that your brand is how you are perceived. We'll talk about how to create and build your brand in a future podcast. And finally, there may be more than one policy. You may have a general communication policy. You may have a policy related to social media or another policy related to how you interact with the media itself. So depending on the needs of your association, you may have more than one policy. So number one is grounding your communication plan with a policy. Number two is actually creating your communication plan. This is where you outline how communication supports your organization's strategic goals. The why, the what, the how, the who, and the when of your communications. Remember that all communications have to serve a purpose. Your communication plan will include your communication goals, and remember that these must be directly linked to helping you achieve your association's goals. That's the reason you have a communication plan. Then you want SMART objectives. SMART representing specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based objectives. And then tactics and activities. As part of your communication plan, you'll want to consider your audiences. So who are they? Are you clear on whom you're serving? What do they need? Where do they play? We talk about that's where we need to reach them, is where they spend time. Consider your messages. So based on your audiences, what do you need to share with them and what do you need back from them? Consider your channels and tools. How will you reach your audiences? By email? Well, do you have a reliable CRM, a customer relationship management email platform? Do you have an email plan? If you're using social media, do you have completed profiles and a plan for maximizing social media? If you're using mailouts, do you have high quality layout and branding that aligns with the rest of your products? Finally, consider your budget and base your budget on what you need to accomplish. Keep it as simple as possible to begin with and be realistic. Considering, for example, the cost of printing in black and white versus color. Even considering integrating social media, although there's no cost to social media, there is a human resource cost. So what is the budget there? So you want to consider those four things: your audiences, your messages, your channels and tools, and your budget. From there, you create an implementation plan or an action plan that outlines the activity, the person responsible, the timeline, when it's going to start and when it's going to end, the resources required, and think man, money, and machines. Human resources, funding, and infrastructure. Man, money, and machines. Those are the ways that you can consider what type of resources are necessary to implement the activities of your communication plan. Also, on your implementation plan, you want the indicators of success. Can you articulate what success looks like in each of your activities? And the anticipated outcomes. So first, you ground with the communications policy. Second, you create a plan. Third, you implement your plan. Based on your implementation plan that you've just created, now start getting it done. Conduct regular check-ins to assess your progress. Now, this may be weekly or monthly or quarterly, depending on your association. Also, keep good notes on any revisions or adjustments that have been made or maybe should have been made, so you can incorporate this information as you do your evaluation process or maybe for next year's communication plan. So first, your policies, second, your plan, third, your implementation, and fourth is evaluating your communication plan. This is where you determine whether you were successful in reaching your communication goals, and that will help you determine whether your communications helped you reach your association's strategic goals. Remember, that's why you're communicating, to achieve your association's goals. Don't communicate just for the sake of communicating. No one needs another newsletter that doesn't matter. So this underscores the importance of really laying out your goals and your SMART objectives in your planning. Otherwise, how will you know if your communication activities achieved what you set out to do? So this podcast has given you a quick overview of communication planning, why it's important, what you need to have in place, how to create, implement, and evaluate your communication plan, and future sessions will go into more detail in each section. Remember the 4 steps: communication policies, your communication plan, implementing your plan, and evaluating your plan. And the takeaway: all associations must communicate effectively. A communication plan will help you do that, and your members will thank you.
You have been listening to AMSYS consultant Lori Keith. If you would like to talk to Lori about this podcast, you can call her at 613-595-1156, extension 8, or email at lori@amsys.com, lori@amces.com. For more information about AMSYS and access to informative articles, tools, and other podcasts, please visit us at www.amsys.com. Thanks for listening.